Good afternoon, and welcome to Straight Talking with Kelly, where real conversations happen. This is where you'll meet the most talented, intelligent, and creative people who come to share tips, resources, and knowledge on various topics. My guest comes from various industries that include television, radio, theater, fashion, culinary arts, and so much more. Join me in welcoming my guest, Miranda Wilson. Welcome, Miranda.
Hey, Kelly, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Before we dive into our conversation about her illustrious career using her voice, let me read a little bit about her background. Miranda has been a voice in the San Francisco Bay Area radio industry for 30 years, working for heritage station KSOL and KDIA. 18 years as midday host at Smooth Jazz KKSF 103.7, host of the Sunday Morning Inspiration on 102.9 KBLX, and currently midday host at WSBZ 106.3, the Seabreeze in Destin, Florida. Miranda is also a two-time winner of the Golden Gate chapter of American Women in Radio and Television Award as Best Midday Host. As a member of AFTRA, she's active in the market and nationally as a voiceover actress. We'll talk a little bit more about these things as we get into our interview. So Miranda, I'm sure people are going to want to know where you were born and raised and some of the schools you attended. Can you help us out?
Okay. Born and raised in Oakland, out of 6 kids in my family, I'm the only one who has not moved. And it's been so rich here. I did elementary school in Oakland, went to Skyline High School, and then San Francisco State, where I majored in theater arts. Got the theater bug in high school, and then did theater arts in San Francisco State. Dropped out in my junior year, went into the working world for a minute and realized, I'm not sure I'm cut out for all of this. Went back to school and still work, but I majored in broadcast. They called it broadcast communication arts in those days.
Okay. So now, when did you realize that using your voice would lead you into radio?
Well, I think what really happened is, like I was telling you the story about being at the crossroads and dropping out of college, getting to working. So I worked for Kaiser, and that's where my mom worked. Much to her chagrin, she did not want me to work there. She wanted me to stay in school. So, kids never listen. So after my 4th year working at Kaiser, one of my managers says, you really should be doing something different. And she suggested I take a class called Choosing the Career You Prefer. She was tired of me calling in sick every Monday. So taking this class, it really had you do a lot of self-inventory. And because I was at a crossroads, the theater was the only thing I ever really wanted, ever. And I disappointed myself by quitting. And so quitting what I was doing really wonderfully. And so it was hard for me to think about even doing something else. So that class had me think back to being a kid and think back and think of your gifts, not the gifts that people say you have, but the gifts that you have. And it took me back to being 10 years old when I actually got to be on the radio for the very first time.
Nice.
If you have time for this story.
Go ahead. Tell me a little bit about it.
Back in those days, especially Oakland had so much the arts in our classes in school. And we all had music was very, very important. And so we had a traveling music teacher because every spring the schools would come together, elementary schools, and they have a citywide musical. And this musical was broadcast on the radio. And the classical station at that time was KKHI. And so this traveling teacher used to rehearse with all the schools, and she'd, go and teach us all the songs and make sure the choir was singing in tune. And so when she came to our school in our class, she noticed that I wasn't singing out loud. I was just mouthing the words. And one of the reasons why I was doing that, because my voice was so low. It was too low. I couldn't figure out what octave to sing with the girls in sopranos. And the boys who sang alto, and the boys' voices hadn't changed, and my voice was lower than even theirs. So I would just mouth the words, and she would put her ear to my voice and realize, you need to sing out. So she asked me to stay during the recess, and I want to hear your voice. And she said, oh, you have a beautiful voice. You must know how to really sing. I said, well, I sing at home. I have a very musical family. And yes, we all play instruments and we all sing. But at school, I wasn't doing any of that. So she thought of this idea. How about having you be the narrator? And I didn't know what a narrator was at 10 years old. But she said, you're the one that's going to introduce the songs and tell us about the music. She says, I'm going to give you a script and I want you. So she took it home, practiced with my mom, and I got it all down pat. So when we had rehearsal, you know, our school came to, it was all at one big auditorium, and I had to stand on this box, and there was this microphone that came down from the ceiling, big ribbon microphone. And I'd have to announce each song, and I wasn't afraid. I was not afraid. I wasn't shy. I was having so much fun. I wasn't thinking about being afraid. And that's what I think that path I got on through, that choosing the career you prefer led me to radio. And then I started researching radio and realized I'm going to go back to San Francisco State, apply, and major in broadcast communication arts. And that's how I got on the path to work at these various radio stations.
That's beautiful. So that teacher saw something in you that you didn't even know exists. So she kind of ignited a fire within you. That's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in our community, one thing about the African-American community in those days, you had the school, you had home, you had your church, your community activities, some people's parents were in sororities and all that stuff. The kids were very important in our community.
Yeah.
It was important, like the church community. If you were to speak and do something, everybody said amen. Everybody said,
right.
And even if you were shy, they pushed you by doing that.
Yeah.
And so in this class that I took as an adult, choosing the career you prefer, it caused you to look back at your life and the things that you did and the things that you did with ease.
Yeah.
Now, at my church, they'd have the Christmas programs and all these other things, and there was always a microphone there.
Yeah.
Now, when it came to the microphone, I was not afraid.
Yeah.
So, it's something that, sometimes these things that our greatest curse, we think, could be our greatest blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I mentioned some of the radio stations that you work for: KSOL, KDIA, 102.9 KBLX, and then 103.7 FM. Give me a few memorable moments and some worse moments.
Well, when I first got in radio, I was not on the air, that's for sure. I started off in promotions at KSOL after, KSOL. And so I started, actually, it was supposed to be an internship that lasted a month. And then a job was there. And I was like, you know what? I better apply for this job and get in right here. Every day was an adventure. Every day, you really had to dress up. It was fun dressing up every day because you never knew who was going to come to the station. It was my job to take the pictures. So those pictures would go to the trade magazines. We were planning events where there would be artists performing. When the artists came to the station, it was my job to show them around, take them into the studio so they could do their interviews, help them do their autograph signings. So it was my responsibility to deal with the winners and the contests and the prizes. And, you had to learn integrity because everybody was trying to play you. But there was always, because they wanted to get free tickets. And so you had to really stand your ground and learn integrity and not know that there are some people that want to get up close to you because they want something from you.
Yeah.
And that's when my street knowledge came in. Growing up in Oakland, you weren't going to be played no fool.
Okay.
So, being in this industry, you were in between the record industry and radio, and you had to be honest to the one you work for, because the record industry, they're trying to work you because they want to get their artists in it, and we got laws against that. We
Mm-hmm.
don't do no plugola, no playola, no.
Girl,
So
Playola was live and well.
right, they're always offering you things, and so you have to be wise and learn that, get that street knowledge very quickly. So, like I say, it was fun. You're always dressing sharp, dressing fun, because there was something, after work, you were going somewhere or planning an event. And so, it was just like theater very much. You planned it, you put it on the air, you orchestrated it, people came, you orchestrated in a way that it was exciting. And then it's on to the next event. So those are some of the fun things that were happening, crazy things that were happening. We'd have fun, crazy discussions. And then there was community stuff that I really, really loved about giving kids an opportunity that had never been on a plane before. And they won tickets, and we were going to send a bunch of people to go see Michael Jackson somewhere. And it was exciting to give those kids an opportunity to be on a plane, to stay in a hotel, and just get the whole VIP treatment. So that part was fun. And then there was that was KSOL, that's and I learned also how business got done, because promotions was in between programming and excuse me, sales. And so you understood, by the time I became a jock, I understood how money was made. And I think a lot of jocks did not understand that and their role in revenue. By the time I got to KKSF, I knew what to do.
Okay.
I knew about the importance of doing endorsements and stuff, because I had learned at KSOL and KDIA. So KDIA was really fun in that I learned how to, it was an African-American Black station in every way of the word. It was AM. So they had to work a lot harder than anybody else. But at the same time, it was very community. You see, KDIA was a station I grew up listening to, where it was important to get the Black vote out. We would hear it there. If it was important to know about issues about health, we would hear it there. Of course, we would hear about the music and the parties and everything else. But this was the station, if somebody was running for office, they would get the word out. And they would go on that station, that particular politician, or there was a whole group of doctors there who used to do shows about health on Saturday mornings. And it was a Sinclair Miller organization of African-American doctors. And one week there was an orthopedic doctor on. The next week it might be a GI doctor on. One week there might be a medical, Dr. Lenore, he had a show.
Oh yeah, Michael Lenore.
And so yeah. I was kind of like managing these shows and making sure that we had a schedule, a calendar of what was coming on, and it could be promoted. And then I, of course, got my little 30-minute talk show called Straight Talk.
Okay. Straight Talk. Love it.
It was a public affairs show. So that was some of the exciting things. But at KDIA, they had a different way of teaching you things. That was, I call the right way, the wrong way. And for the sake of this broadcast, I'm going to say the ghetto way.
Okay. You got some explaining to do.
Oh, do I ever? Let's see. Why did I even embark on that story?
Okay.
Okay. And most people that know me in the business know this 3 ways, and they love for me to tell the story, or they hate it. So I'm going to tell a part of it. The right way to teach you something, if you say going swimming, teaching you how to swim, you learn how to hold your breath. You learn how to float first before you even, get out there and do the Australian crawl. You learn about the basics of swimming. And then there's the wrong way. Get out there and dog pedal. Well, you're floating, you're doing good, you haven't gone to the bottom, but you don't have any style, and you just dog pedaling. And then there's the ghetto way. You say you can swim, we're going to push you in. If you don't go to the bottom, you can swim.
Wow, that's the true meaning of sink or swim, right?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
At all of these stations, I got a variety of education in this manner. By the time I got to KDIA, I had gotten the way where they push you in. And so everything I learned there was simply by doing it. They said, like the general manager let me know, they're having the Oakland elections, city of Oakland for mayor, all the whole entire platform, everybody. We want you to cover that. When? Today. Yeah, you're going to do call-ins. We're going to have you go down to headquarters of all these places, and we want you to do call-ins during the afternoon drive and all through the evening until the election is over.
Wow.
For real? So, yeah.
So
go through some of the absolute worst thing that happened, my payroll checks bounced there too.
wow. Okay, well, say no more. That was the explaining that you had to do.
Yeah.
I get it. I see why you said what you said now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move out of that. So now this is when we're going to talk about how you and I met. And of course, I didn't meet you until afterwards, but I worked at KKSF when it first started, when the radio station first started after they bought it from KLOK, Yes No Radio. And you started working for KKSF. So talk about your experience working at KKSF. And I think what we have most in common is our love for the program director, Steve Feinstein, who dearly passed away, but he was definitely like the rock, my rock. And then he was also your rock. So tell me about your relationship and what it was like working with Steve.
Well, I came in 92.
And don't take forever, because I know this can go on. So just in a nutshell.
Well, I came in 92. And at that time, I was at that crossroads, while I was getting into radio. I had worked for KDIA and was having some problems with getting paid. And I wasn't sure I was going to be able to stay there. So I had gone back to Kaiser. And a friend of mine told me, you know what? You're not going to be on the radio working at Kaiser. And I was like, he was my program director at KSOL. He was no longer working there, but he told me, you're not going to get to your goal working there. And I was like, yeah, but I still have my bills paid. He says, yeah, but sometimes there's sacrifices. So I had another good friend who told me to make an air check. And so I had worked at one pit stop that I don't have to really go into, but it was at KBLX. And from that air check, she made an air check that she felt was good enough for me to send out. And she said, send it in 10 places. I said, no, I'm not sending 10 places because I'm not sure I want to do this business anymore. I sent it 2. I sent one to KTID, which was over in San Rafael, and one to KKSF. Steve listened to my air check and called me. I was working at Kaiser, and he called me there and said, hi, I'm Steve Feinstein, program director at KKSF. I heard your air check and I'd like to talk to you. I was like, wow. Just that quick. I sent it on a Tuesday. By Thursday, he was calling me.
Wow.
So I made arrangements, came and interviewed with him. And what I loved about him is that he was interested in the fact that if I could think, not someone who just told you what to do, but he wanted to know, he was interested in your background, he gave me a list of the music. He said, this is a pronunciation list. I want you to get familiar with it, because at that time, the station played a very international format. And I was really excited. He said, I'm going to have you work first, I'm going to have you watch the overnight guy. And if you feel comfortable, I want you to do 1 hour and record that.
Wow.
He says, I'm going to review that and I'm going to call you the day after and we'll go over it. And I said, oh, okay. He says, I'm not making any promises. And I was like, no, okay, cool. All right. So he says, he listened to the 1 hour and he said, I'd like to hire you to work part-time. And for now, I'd like you to work. We have one slot open on Sunday. Was it Sunday night? No, Saturday night for Sunday. So I'd work overnights, come in on Saturday at midnight and work until 5 in the morning or something like that. And that's how it started.
Wow.
But he would review my tape every Tuesday. He said, I want you to record your show. put it in my box. He'd call me at my job and he would review it every Tuesday. And we had the most fun time talking about, because it was very much like theater to me.
Yeah.
Then you do your best production, your best performance, there were always notes afterwards. And most jocks are not used to that. So when it got to the point where he called me up and he said, okay, within 4 months, he says, I want you to work 2 nights now. I was like, oh, okay, 2 nights now. And so it was pretty amazing, that relationship. And most of the other jocks didn't quite understand what was going on, because we'd be in there laughing,
having
and
a good
most
time.
jocks hated air check sessions.
Okay.
And sometimes he'd be listening, he'd go, yes, yes, because I guess what it was is that I was able to execute some of the things that we discussed. And so I have notes to this day that I won't throw away. Because one note said, the most important thing that I have to do at this time is work with you in my career, the most important thing.
Wow.
And so he got me ready to, within 8 months, I was offered the overnight position.
Wow.
And then the following year, I was offered middays.
Isn't that wonderful? He was so amazing, wasn't he?
Yeah.
That
He
was
could
my
be
guy.
I mean, there was one time we had a misunderstanding, but we certainly got it straight, and we talked and stuff. And he was, I guess, someone who I will say that he helped to really discover me.
Yes.
There are things he told me that I use to this day. He used to think, he says, what is this little notebook you have? And I said, well, it's a notebook of adjectives. He said, really? I said, yeah, I don't want to say the same thing in the same way twice. And I think that comes from the music background as well as the theater. I mean, it's so rare when you do the same thing the same way twice. You're always trying to figure out a way to grow. And he liked that. And I like I say, I think back to those days that he said, there's going to come a time, Miranda, when you don't have a program director to work with you. Some program directors will listen to you and they'll say, oh, wow, you're not cutting the mustard, and the ratings will be different or whatever, and you won't know why they hadn't let you go. But if that happens, you will know why here. And you will always, you'll always be ready, whether you have a program director or not. You'll be your own program director. And see, the industry was changing many years after the station changed hands. There would be times that we didn't have program director for months, or they'd get a new one and then they'd get another new one. It was a revolving door. But how do you still maintain the integrity of the station? And you have to have some idea of what direction the station is going and find out and do it.
Yeah.
So he was somebody that really helped to develop me and find out the stuff that's within you based on who you are. He said, I didn't hire you. I mean, there was a period I was going through when I was learning that I was trying my best to sound like the other jocks. Kind of similar to what I did when I was 10 years old, huh?
Okay.
I was trying to fit in. And because I figured all the jocks sounded very cool. So Steve asked me, where are your hands when you're on the radio? I said, well, I have one finger on the microphone, and the other finger is on the first, because we're still playing CDs, the first CD that we're going to play. He says, well, I notice you use your hands when you talk. I said, no, I can't do that. I'm scared. I might not find the button back. He said, I hired you to sound like you. You're sounding too reserved. Our listeners are not walking in the park with parasols in a park somewhere. I want you, if the music's funky, I want you to say so. I want you to use the way you speak. And so that's how I just started being relaxed and became myself. What kind of job hires you to be you?
Girl, Well, you know what? Just listening to your story, it's very parallel to Nick Francis. I interviewed Nick, where Steve did the same kind of thing to him. And then he also kept notes. He actually brought his notebook onto the interview show. So, yeah, those were beautiful moments that you had with him. So, years later, after he passed, I don't know how long it was before you guys decided to do a reunion. And that's when you reached out to me.
Oh yeah. Because the station had the station went off the air at 2009.
Okay.
And so, like I say, I'm connected to, like I said, it was a good experience. That was my best radio experience. That was, as I mentioned, the right way, the wrong way. That was the right way to teach somebody. And from those relationships there, a lot of people came, as you see all those people that were in the room at the reunion.
It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And it was everyone that ever worked there. And
yeah, from different generations. Yeah, because it was some people, I was part of the very first crew. Mm-hmm. I was there, and I was there for 7 years before I left. And then just to see all of those guys, like I said that I was not going if Bob Sargent wasn't going to be there. So Bob Sargent came. Bob Sargent was Steve's program director.
Right.
So he was the music director.
Yeah, he was the music
right, because Nick Francis and Dory Stein were his program directors. I mean,
music director.
Music
director and Dory. So he was kind of, but he was before Dory and wasn't he before Dory and
Nick was before Dory.
No, I'm talking about Bob.
Oh, Bob was there from the very beginning. He was there with me because we were also a part of KLOK.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we were part of that station before it came. But anyway, so that was a beautiful event. And like you and I talked earlier, I just can't imagine another reunion, a KKSF reunion, because that one was so monumental that I don't think you can repeat that.
Yeah, and the purpose, I think it was, I was talking to Doug Stern, who was the general manager afterwards, who was an amazing person, because he had to pick up the pieces after Steve died and after the sale. It was all these things going on at the same time. The sale of the station, Steve's death, and then the family fought to sell the station. And then of course, there was one point when the general manager and a couple of other people had enough funds and they were going to try to keep the station from being sold. So there was a lot of turmoil. The station had so many people loved that station so much.
Yeah.
Almost like a human being. Yeah. Because I think it was so diverse in that, I mean, you couldn't count that many Black people there, but it was diverse in that everybody had a place there, every ethnic group, and people that listened had the same vibe.
Oh, absolutely.
When you went to those listener concerts, I have never been to an event where you find a homeless person sharing their food with one of these Silicon Valley folks, or one of those folks that live in Piedmont, or one of the people that live in, what's that neighborhood that looks like it's in Tuscany sometimes, Pacific Heights.
Okay.
You find these people all in the same place, enjoying this music in the same manner.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a lifetime experience.
Mm-hmm. And so people got on planes to come. Yeah, but all the time when I was working there, Steve always mentioned, "Do you know Kelly Armstrong? Do you know Kelly Armstrong?" I said, "No, she left before I came." And he says, "You gotta meet Kelly Armstrong. She was like the heart of the station." I don't know about all that. Well, that's what Steve, that's how he looked at it, Yeah. And so he wanted us to meet so badly.
Yeah, he did. And I remember when you reached out to me and I was like, okay. So we were able to share stories. Yeah, I'd miss him so much. Yeah.
Well, for me, just saying him dying, it's not so much that he died. Steve committed suicide. It was no secret that happened. So it was very difficult for me to say those words for many, many years.
See, and I never say them.
Yeah, well, I had to learn how to say it, because Steve left a lot of good behind, you know, when somebody dies in that manner, and no one wants, they feel it's disrespectful, but to me, it was, I learned a lot from his life. It was his choice. I had to learn to accept it, and become one with it. It taught me that there are a lot of people sometimes, there were times that I could feel that Steve was going through something and we'd talk. And it always taught me to continue to rely on my instincts when that happens.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to follow, no, sometimes about it. You do in this life have to follow your dream. And he had other dreams.
Yeah.
And when you don't get a chance to go forward with that, it does something to you. And so there have been other people that in this industry that have gone through the same situation, and it didn't progress perhaps in leaving the earth the way that he did. But I know or understand the signs. And I also understand that I will let nothing, I try not to ever let anything be more important than my soul.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
thank God that I got to know him. I thank God that we were friends. That's why I hold on to the little letters and the little notes. Just reminds me that he had struggles like we all do. He
yeah.
had struggles, and we have to deal with those struggles, and face them and work with them. We all have them personally. We all have low points in our lives where we are sadness or depressed, or maybe having to kind of deal with our own ghosts and demons and things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, and like I said, I actually have wonderful notes and books and all kinds of stuff that Steve had given me, you know. So one of my favorite books that he had referred to me was The Road Less Traveled by Scott M. Peck. If you've never read that
No,
one,
I've got to get that.
that was his go-to book. Because I used to teach self-esteem seminars out, you know, in the community. And once I read that book, I was like, oh my God.
That's what I mean. You have so
The
much
first
time.
page starts off, the very first page is very powerful. But anyway, so yeah, so Steve Feinstein, bless his heart, always will be remembered from us. So now I actually want to move on and talk to you about you being a member of SAG and AFTRA and some of the voiceover work you did. So without going into a whole bunch of detail.
Not with me.
Yeah, you're definitely loquacious, but you're in radio. You can't help it.
I will try.
You can't help it. So tell me a little bit about your voiceover work and some of the commercials that we've heard you in.
The voiceover work was going on all the while I was trying to get in radio. And I think during the time at KDIA, I had reached the point where I had to join the union.
Okay.
So although a lot of bad things happen, there's always a good thing that happens. So I got an agent. And so a lot of times I'd go on go-sees because I had theater background. I just wouldn't do voiceover work. I would do actual commercials where I was on camera. But one of my main first gigs I got that was long-term was California Lottery.
Oh, okay.
And California Lottery spots, especially, they had spots that ran ethnically. They had the Latino ones, and they had ones that run in the African-American community, and then they had ones that ran on TV that were more generic, you know, for everybody. So I had an opportunity to not just do the African-American focus, I also did the TV ones too. So the campaign would come on. And so anyway, that got that one through, like I say, through the union. And so the fun time, I had to do one with Isaac Hayes.
Oh, okay.
Isaac Hayes, they had a scratcher called the Fat Cat Scratcher.
Yeah.
And he was the voice of the fat cat.
Okay.
And so I got a chance to go in the studio and record it with him. It was so exciting to be there with Isaac Hayes, you know, the voice number one. So he laid all his stuff down, and then I was the main announcer. So they would leave time okay, you got to do this line in 6.5 seconds. You got to do this one. And it would be 6.5 seconds you got to do it in. And so, I was familiar enough with doing these that I would, give them various versions. And he said, okay, that was 6.7. We need 6.5. No problem. And we do it. And he was over on the other side of the studio in the control room and said, "You're a bad sister." And I was like, oh, man. He said, "You laid that down right on time." And see him producing all this music and Oscars and Shaft and music we grew up listening to, for him to know that I'm much of a professional, that's what I knew. I said, oh wow, voiceover thing is what I need to keep pursuing. So that was, like I say, my first big client. So that lasted for quite some time. So I did that. I got to do back in the day when they had America's Most Wanted, to be on the screen. Oh, that was crazy. It was wonderful. I got to cry on screen because my ex shot my brother. Let's see. A lot of there's one that I did that was it was interesting. Here's one that you always follow your instincts. And I had to read it was for a digital camera. I don't know, it was Canon or something. And they wanted a soccer mom. This one ended up being on the radio. And so the soccer mom, they wanted, so you give a generic soccer mom, the typical, oh, my daughter Cindy does this and my daughter Cindy does that. I did one read where it's, my daughter Cindy, she is so, you know what? I love my baby. My baby is bad. So I gave a more urban sounding one. And that's the one that they wanted. And a lot of times I say to people who are learning to do voice work, give what's within you, give them what they think that they would like that's on the sides, and then give something extra where they might not like it, but it's real, it's really you. And sometimes they don't know what they want until they see it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
I do every day as far as commercials are concerned. I work for a company that I do freelance for them, and they do commercials. They have clients, television clients and radio clients, and some ad agencies. So after I finish talking to you, I've noticed I've got a bunch of spots to do today, and they're for stations across the country. I'm the voice for ABC 15 News in Arizona, and I do most of all their promos. What's coming up on the news, what different, like right now they've got Christmas things going on, or sometimes they're heartfelt news stories, a variety of things. And
that's beautiful.
So
that's nice.
Everybody's got a home studio, so that's the way we get things done nowadays.
Okay. So now, Miranda, I know you have a loyal fan following on your Sunday morning coffee. And I know that because I'm one of the fans with your inspirational and motivational speak. So talk to me a little bit about your show and how did you get started with that? Some of your quotes and the inspirations, they're so wonderful, very motivating. Some are very uplifting, very spiritual. So you do a gamut of an array of different ones. And then but the beauty is that you have your big white coffee cup. And I'm like, is she really drinking coffee in this?
People send me these cups. I have lots of cups now. I don't know what to do with all these cups, but people are sending me cups. And sometimes they have scriptures on them, and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But this started when I was at KBLX. It was the first time I'm doing the gospel thing, which is another side of me. I never thought I could reveal that side. And I loved it. It was fun. It was a great PD at that station. So during the pandemic, they didn't want people to come into the station, and because they limited how many jocks could come in the building. So I was actually at home. They asked me to do social media and stuff like that, and I was getting paid for just not. And they had somebody else fill in for me. During the pandemic and during the shutdown, I noticed that people were so sad. I scrolled through, and very sad. People were very, locked inside, and financially it was tough, and how to get outside yourself. There was so much of the unknown.
Yeah.
And how long was this going to last? There was a lot of anger and apathy and just all kinds of feelings and fear. People's children, it was just, and then the other side of me, I work now at Children's Hospital, as always a backup job at Children's Hospital. And we were seeing a lot of the children just suffer because of not being able to go to school and not being able, emotional situations, mental situations. Their children worried about their parents. And so that I started looking at my friends, my own friends, commenting on, remember the day when people was running out buying toilet paper and all these little things, and so I don't know, in my spirit, I just kept hearing the words, fear not, fear not. And I don't know, I just started saying, I'll just take 5 minutes and have a little Sunday morning. I was doing that at the radio station, but I was doing it on social media.
Okay.
But sporadically, I do this. I don't want anything in return. I don't want to promote it. I don't want to be an influencer. I don't want to have sponsorships. I did a lot of that. And I was a very driven person in radio. This is just for the love of our community. Yeah. I mean, I go through stuff too. And sometimes I learned during the shutdown that whatever I was going through, somebody else is going through too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, I enjoy listening to, sometimes I'll just be scrolling and I'll see you. And I'm like, and then I'll stop and I go, oh, she got the mug. What's she talking about today? And then, I will definitely tune in. So it is a great, great, great way to listen, to get inspirational quick, because it's quick. You do it, it's not like you talk about it for a long time. You just get it in and you get it out. So anybody that's really interested in hearing some inspirational and motivational talk, even though she doesn't want people to necessarily go to it, I'm telling you to go anyway. Go check her out.
I want
check
you
her
to
out
go
on Facebook.
Yes, there's a
check her out on
page.
Facebook.
There's a separate page for it that I created because the other page is more me talking about how handsome Winston Duke is.
Yeah. So no, definitely check her out.
Yeah.
But now, so I want to switch gears altogether. And I want to ask you to tell me, name 3 people that have inspired you.
My mother.
Okay.
Everybody says their mother, but my mother, honestly, she even has a book. My mother wrote a book before she died, and it was my job to put it together. And I'm not, no joke. Steve Feinstein was very, as far as my professional life, and that came over into my personal life. It was very inspiring. It's hard to find somebody that isn't related to me because my family is so something else. I'm trying to think of that third person is going to be hard to find. That's a hard one.
Well, what I think about for you is that little teacher that helped you at that 10-year-old you.
There's a bunch of teachers. Like I say, I've been able to find all of them. I've been able to find, a bunch of us that went to school. We took one of them to brunch. Her name was Mrs. Keys. And she was very inspirational during a time when we didn't want inspiration. That's being a teenager.
Of course.
She was and so we found her and we took her to brunch. It was about 7 of us.
Okay.
And I was glad because she died not soon afterwards. So.
But so you got your mom, Steve Feinstein, and who's going to be number 3? You don't have to have 3.
Actually, my best friend, I have a best friend, Sheila. She's very inspirational. She's actually the one that I worked with at KSOL. She was, she is.
Okay.
Yeah, she.
Okay, so Sheila. Okay, so as we get ready to wrap up, tell me, is there anything you'd like to say to the listening audience?
Well,
You got any words of wisdom for them? Any inspiration?
it's something that always comes back. I think people get the most from, because this world has a tendency to make us feel that we need to make ourselves over. We need to go get something. And it's that it's been on my mind. I haven't quite been able to put it into words, but it's that part about people saying that you are enough.
Mm.
And people say, oh, no, I'm not. But you really, really are. Everything I think I've told you today, it gets tested about who you are every day.
Mm-hmm.
And when things come to you, even when they're difficult, they don't come to destroy you. They come for you to understand who you are in this world and how it all works. There's been an old saying about them not being able to keep it to myself, what the Lord has done for me. And sometimes you think that what you have is no earthly good to anybody else, even the mistakes that you've made, the vulnerabilities that we all have them. And it's really sometimes good to allow these things that happen to us, allow us to open it and look at it. Sometimes, like I say, the worst, the things that we hate about ourselves the most can be our greatest gift. I did not like my voice.
Wow.
A lot of people say, oh, I do not like my skin color. I do not like my hair. I do not like, it's so easy to say what we
so
don't
much, right.
have. But we have abundance. We have everything we need if we allow just ourselves to shine the light on it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I don't, like people let, especially African Americans, we had 247, over 200 years of, I posted something today that was on my mind, of captivity, and 100 years of Jim Crow. Still didn't stop us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we, yeah, it's enough. We have
I think
it.
about that song when you said
we
that.
just have to celebrate it.
Yeah, ain't no stopping us now. That was the OJs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, absolutely.
That was what's his name?
Oh, it sure wasn't. It
Ooh.
sure wasn't the OJs. It was.
It was just on my what. It ain't. It's gone. It's
Right.
That's a shame.
And so, of course, soon as we end, it'll come back to both of us, because soon as you said that, I was like,
At
it's
2
not
in the
the
morning.
OJs. Yeah. So, Miranda, I'd like to thank you for taking out the time to be on Straight Talking with Kelly, where real conversations happen. It has been such a delight. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me tell all my long stories.
And to my listening audience, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Please find me on YouTube, Straight Talking with Kelly. Like, subscribe, comment, share, and come back. See you next time.